bien. Bueno, embajador, muchas gracias.
Cintia, a ti.
Sí, bueno, vamos. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wilson Center in this 50th anniversary year of our institution. My name is Cindy Arnson. I'm the director of the Latin American program. It's a pleasure to see you here and so many friends of Colombia. As we know, the Colombia-U.S. relationship is one of the absolute strongest in the Western Hemisphere and absolutely, without a doubt, the strongest in South America. From the origins of Plan Colombia in 1999-2000 through Peace Colombia, its successor declared between President Obama and President Juan Manuel Santos, to the present day, the United States and Colombia have worked closely on critical foreign policy objectives for both countries, from the fight against drug trafficking and guerrilla insurgency to the fostering of inclusive development and the protection of human rights. Trade relations, which is a specialty of Ambassador Santos, have grown under the U.S. Colombia Bilateral Free Trade Agreement, and Colombia and the United States have also worked together closely in third countries, such as in Central America and Mexico and around the globe, to provide security and military training. Now that relationship has entered a new phase. The administrations of President Donald Trump and President Iván Duque share a number of core objectives, foremost among them combating the surge of coca production that is at the highest level in Colombia's history. But there are other issues that matter, from assuring the successful reintegration of former guerrilla combatants to bringing sustainable development to former conflict zones, to addressing the violence against social and human rights leaders, and to fostering U.S. private investment to contribute to the growth of the Colombian economy. We could go on and on. So we are thrilled to welcome Ambassador Santos in what I believe is his first public event since presenting his credentials to the White House last month. He is the ambassador of Colombia to the United States and has had a number of distinguished posts in Colombian public and private life. Just as a personal footnote, I first met Francisco Santos when he was the founder and director of an NGO called País Libre, which was the first NGO in the world dedicated to combating kidnapping. And he himself had been a kidnapping victim, was in captivity for about 8 months under orders of Pablo Escobar at the time, wreaking havoc in Colombia, placing bombs on civilian airlines in hotels and around. So he knows in carne propia, in his own skin, what the violence and really depravity that Colombia has suffered. From that post, he has served in a number of capacities. He was vice president of Colombia from 2002 through 2010 during the two administrations of President Álvaro Uribe. He went into exile for a period of time in 2000 following threats from the FARC. He has been editor-in-chief of Colombia's leading newspaper, El Tiempo. He has taught journalism and international relations at a variety of prestigious universities in Colombia. He was awarded a Nieman Fellowship at Harvard University, and has studied here in the United States, both at the University of Kansas and the University of Texas. So, Ambassador Santos, welcome to the Wilson Center. We look forward to your remarks.
Cindy, thank you very much, and thanks a lot for this scenario, so that we can start working in furthering our relationship, which has been very strong for the past 2 decades, but has a very long history that I think sometimes is not well understood. Yesterday I was at the Pentagon, and they were showing how we fought together in one of the most forgotten wars, the Korean War. The only country in Latin America that helped in that effort was Colombia. You go to Korea, and the recognition that we have is impressive. And I think the first military memorandum and work that we started doing is going to be 80 years old next year with the Navy. So it just shows that Colombia, in that sense, has continuity, is different from most of the other Latin American nations. You do a survey of image of the United States in Latin America, and the only country where it is positive and very positive is Colombia. So it has something to do with our view of the world and a history that we share. We have great challenges of consolidation with a change in the context of Latin America that I think is very, very important. You have Brazil in a difficult situation. You have an Argentina in a very difficult situation. You have a huge political change in Mexico. And I think in that context, the political relations have to be viewed as in a different light. And a strong, stable ally is needed more than ever, especially with the Venezuelan crisis. So how do we strengthen that bond? What role can Colombia play regarding the violence crisis in Central America, especially with all the capabilities that we have, capabilities that we can extend to many of those countries, especially in the Northern Triangle, capabilities in terms of rule of law, capabilities in terms of intelligence, capabilities in terms of police work against gangs and against drug traffic. There's a scenario that can be played there. We can work. We can work also in, and I think this is very, very important in strengthening a relationship between, especially navies, for interdiction. You're starting to see a lot of the traces of drugs leaving out of Ecuador, and they're going to move down. Once you put the pressure in Colombia, that'll move to the easiest, let's say, to the easiest way out. So I think we need to look more at a comprehensive policy, security policy in the continent to stop the flow of drugs. And the biggest challenge, or the two biggest challenges that Colombia has, and both of them we're going to need to work very, very closely with the Americans. Our first 200,000 hectares of coca. I really don't know what happened in the Santos administration. We had 40,000 hectares in the year 2002. It was the efforts, if they had been sustained, probably to now we would have had that problem solved. I frankly don't know what happened, but the reality is that now we have a problem bigger than ever in our history. The latest time we had closest to what we have now was in 2002, when we had 180,000, and it took us almost 10 years to get it back down to 40,000, and unfortunately it just shows that persistence is absolutely critical, that you cannot let your foot down. There's an INL does a survey of how many coca in coca regions, and in 2007, 65% of the coca producing peasants said, we want to get out of this business. They did the survey last year, and only 5% did. That just shows something that I think is critical, and it's one of the biggest issues we have to address. Again, in a context that is very difficult, especially with the decision of Canada legalizing cannabis. And we have lost, to a certain extent, or at least the unity and the unifying consensus of fighting drug traffickers that Colombia had is now lost. There's sectors, and unfortunately, in the past government, they allowed this. They helped this issue by I don't know if it's a perception or political will, but there's an important element of Colombia society that thinks that it's okay to cultivate coca, that it's not illegal. That this fight is unworthy, so let's look at the other way. That wasn't like that in the year 2010. That wasn't like that in the year 2000. That wasn't like that in the year 1990. Drug trafficking as a whole was seen as one of the biggest challenges that Colombian society had. Drug trafficking as a whole was seen as a big a national security issue. That's not so anymore. So what we're going to do in these 4 years is not only reestablish that belief, even though we will never have the consensus that we had before, but it's going to be very clear to a peasant that planting coca is not legal. It's not acceptable. It's an illegal issue, and I think that's a message that has to be sent very, very clearly. We're going to have a very tough policy against drug traffickers and drug cultivation and drug production and drug consumption in public areas, which is very, very, very important. Obviously, we're going to have an integral policy of air spraying and spraying where it can be done, obviously after adapting to the constitutional court conditions, and we're working on getting that ready. We don't know when, but we have to adapt any type of policy to what the constitutional court said. But air spraying is not the silver bullet. We need to integrate other types of policies. So we're going to increase. Right now we have 23. We received 23 eradication groups in the year the 7th of August. Right now we have 43, and by the end of the year we're going to have 100. And we'll keep growing eradication groups, and we hope that we will be able to do manual eradication with civilians and reach the 100,000 hectares of manual eradication that we had in the year 2009. So that's another element. The third element is creating development in many of those areas too, and helping those areas change their productive vocation or the use of land. For example, and we need American help, and we're starting to send that message, and I think they're opening up their mind to the idea of having palm for coca, cacao for coca, different products for coca, and set up a special, I wouldn't say call it quota or special market access to it. I was talking to the palm oil, the palm industry, which is an industry that is highly intensive in work. How we can associate peasants in many of those areas, especially in Tumaco, where we have had palm. Tumaco used to have 25,000 hectares of palm. Because of the pressure of the illegal groups in coca, it was reduced to 15,000. But right now we have 50,000 hectares of coca in the Tumaco area. Nariño has 50,000 hectares of coca. Catatumbo has 50,000 hectares of coca too. That's half of the coca that we have. So we need something that is really labor intensive, can associate peasants, and produces in the long term. So with the Palm Association, we're looking at designing a program in which we would have 120,000 new hectares of palm in those areas, with a special quota of 500,000 tons of palm oil here in the U.S., which is 0.05% of the use of that fuel or of that oil here. So it's a very small element in which we tell them, don't give us aid, give us access. And we'll work to really change the economic conditions of those areas. We're doing the same with cacao. Sinchi and the Ministry of Agriculture, the head of the Consolidation and Stabilization office, is we are designing these programs so that we can go into many of those areas with an integral plan for crop substitution and legal income generation and employment. But you need to have a carrot. You need to have a big stick in order for a carrot to work. What we have seen is that if you don't have a big stick, no carrot will work. And so that stick is a very aggressive eradication policy, which we're going to have. That's one of the big challenges. The second challenge is Venezuela, and And I guess it's very important to understand the dimensions. Germany, the fourth economy, the third or fourth economy in the world, received 1 million Syrians in 3 years. We received 1 million. We're the 27th economy, I think, and we received 1 million Venezuelans in 1 year. It's very possible that in the next 2 years we will receive between 2 and 3 million more. And I'll tell you why. The migration that we have now is especially parents. They left their children with their grandparents in Venezuela. They were sending money to them to live. In Colombia, they would earn $300, between $250, $300. They would live with $100, $150, and they would send $100 and $150 for Venezuela, for their grandparents and their children, and sometimes their brothers to live there, or whomever was taking care of the children. That money right now, 6 months ago, it was enough. Now it's not. The crisis is so big, and the dollarization of products and inflation has hit so hard that it's no longer enough what they're sending. What are they going to do? What is the logic decision to do? Send for the kids and for the grandparents. So you're going to start to see a new migration. The second generation is going to come, and that's for every couple, it's 4 or 5 persons more. So we have to get ready for a dramatic increase in migration from Venezuela to Colombia. That will destabilize Colombia. And an unstable Colombia, it's a huge mess for the U.S. I can't relate to you how big that problem could be. So we need a solution to the Venezuelan crisis. For the first time, you have Argentina, Chile, Peru, Paraguay, probably Brazil if Bolsonaro wins, Panama, most of Central America, in agreement that there has to be a solution to the Venezuelan problem. First time you have a consensus. What we need is how. And I think that's where the big question is, and that's where we need to work very closely with the Americans. The Americans are helping very much in terms of humanitarian aid, but policy regarding what type of solution, there's none yet, to be very, very, very sincere. So, and unfortunately, the opposition, I think, has a credibility problem inside Venezuela and has a credibility problem in many of the places where they are doing their work. I think they need to step up. They need to, when you have that consensus, if the Venezuelan opposition steps up and shows the way, all the countries would start moving in that direction. And I think the sort of codependency that has been created between the Venezuelan opposition and to a certain extent Washington, and it needs to stop. They need to step up. And that's a very, very important message that I think has to be clearly sent. And what's to step up? I don't know. It's up to them. Well, I know to a certain extent, but I wouldn't tell because this is an open, and I don't want to get in trouble. But it's very, very important. They're looking at the 10th of January as a very important time frame. But I think you need to work in terms of strengthening sanctions. There's a very, very big sanction that there are a lot of sanctions that still can be taken by the U.S. government to really cripple the economy. It would have a huge humanitarian impact, but we're having it already. We're having it. It's not that it's very difficult that it can get worse. So I think there's room for those types of actions. You have to isolate politically more the Venezuelan regime, and you need a sense of direction from the Venezuelan opposition, a strong message of what do they want to do, where do they want to go, how should we do it, and I think most of the Latin American countries would follow that decision. They have more legitimacy certainly than the Venezuelan government, but they're not exploiting it. So I think it's very important for them to be very, very strong. And finally, the element of commerce. I think Colombia, to a certain extent, didn't use as much its free trade agreement as it should have. There's a huge possibility of exports. As a matter of fact, there are companies now looking at Colombia to become a hub, a logistics hub for all of Latin America. The world of the future is a world of logistics, and around logistics companies. So you need to design that policy to get all those companies into Colombia. The arrival of Amazon with a service center, I think it's a very, very good message. But there are other companies that are looking at increasing their investment in Colombia. But we need to reduce taxes. We need to do a lot of we need to get our house in order, because unfortunately the house was left in a little bit of this is an understatement, of a fiscal disorder, with huge taxes, huge bureaucracy. So it probably a year or 2 years before we were able to get the house in order again. And that's a job that President Duque is doing. And we want to work very, 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 very closely with the new technology, with what they call the Industrial Revolution, the new Industrial Revolution 4.0. The Ministry of Information is ready to pass a law that will open Colombia dramatically to new businesses in terms of the internet economy. And I think that's very, very important. That'll probably leave Colombia as one of the biggest players, if not the biggest player in the region for those type of companies. And that's something that's going to be a very big bet by the Colombian government in the future. So we're doing our job. Colombia, anyway, when you look at it in the past 16 years, is a great, and there's a narrative to be told that I think it's forgotten. And sometimes, and when I go to Congress, sometimes they forget it, because the first thing I say is thank you. And say, thank you for what? And I say thank you because when Colombia was up to here, you gave us a hand. When we were almost a failed state in the year 2002, we worked together, and look at where we are now. So there's a great narrative. I don't know what other foreign policy in the last 40 years has been as successful as Plan Colombia. And I think we need to work on that. We need to learn from that, and I think Plan Colombia can become an example of how to bring stabilization to a region, which is something that we want to work. We want to work with the U.S. to help create those capabilities in many countries that don't have it, but we have to deal with our problems first. And those problems, you know what they are. It's 1 million refugees and 200,000 hectares of coca. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to take the advantage of chairing this to ask the first question, which is really sort of multifaceted. But before I do that, I've been remiss in thanking and recognizing the DCM of the Colombian Embassy, Daniel Avila, for his help in pulling this together, and Catalina Casas of our own staff, who harkens from Colombia. So we have a lot of in-house capacity as well. The question may be overly complex, but let me just say, let me combine what you said about the need to reduce taxes and the bureaucracy in order to attract investment. Colombia has a very strict regla fiscal, which requires a progressive reduction in the government deficit. At the same time, as you have an increase in demand for government expenditures, because as much as we know that the drug trafficking agenda is central to Colombia's stabilization and certainly to U.S. Colombian relations, we also know that Colombian public opinion doesn't care a whole lot about drug trafficking. They care about the quality of health care. They care about corruption. They care about the quality of education. So not only to meet that social agenda, but also to deal with the significant commitments. The peace accord is a polarizing concept, but what I will say is that the reintegration of demobilized combatants is a security imperative. Given the number of people of ex-FARC who have gone now into the disidencia to provide opportunities for these people, how in a scenario of reducing taxes and having to reduce the budget deficit, can Colombia possibly meet the number, the extent of the expectations and demands, not only from the U.S. government, but also from the Colombian people?
Okay, let me start by a full program for a
What I
presidential
can
candidate. No, let me start with something that I think you're wrong. If something has changed in the last 10 years, is drug trafficking in Colombia, in the schools. That has become a huge issue. Micro trafficking, a huge issue. 15 years ago, you would go to a very small rural village and you wouldn't find drugs. That's not the case anymore. So the middle class, the low class, the lower classes are seeing their schools, their parks being taken over by small micro trafficking organizations that are becoming more powerful, and consumption is booming. So one of the reasons we won was that. They are really worried. President Duque just signed a decree in which if you are found smoking pot in a public area, you will have to go. First of all the stuff you have will be taken away, and second, you will have to go either to rehabilitation or not criminalization, but I think it has a 75% popularity, that decree. People are very worried without that. And I'll give you an anecdote. 2015, I was a presidential candidate for Bogota, and I went around town, Bogota, and I spoke to many of the deans of high schools. I don't know how to call principals. And I told them, look, if I'm mayor, what do you want me to do? You want more computers? What do you want? They said, I only want one thing. And this was a repeated answer. I want you to build walls around the school. And I said, walls? Through the open spaces, they're selling drugs to our kids, and this is becoming unmanageable. So that's become a huge issue. It's very, very important to understand how big that issue has become. One. Two, we need to be competitive. We have some of the highest taxes in Latin America. No company will come to Colombia to invest if you have the highest taxes. That's just an economic reality. So we need to adapt our fiscal situation to a competitive situation with other countries in the region. Not to speak to the U.S. that reduced taxes to 21%, which I think is going to become, to be very sincere, that creates a very big, I wouldn't be surprised if many of our countries in the next 5 years or 10 years will have a 21% tax rate, just like the U.S. does. So we need to work in that. And you need to focus expenditure. That's the only way you can start providing access to those issues that are also very important to Colombians. Thank God Colombia has probably the best health system in America. It has problems, they need to be solved, but it's considered one of the best health systems. It has a deficit of around 2.5 billion pesos, $1 billion. That's not a big issue if you start controlling corruption with medicine and certain elements of wrongdoing in that sector, which is well financed. Education, I think it's a big issue, but I think the one of the elements of education that you need to understand now is that we are educating people who are coming out of universities with no employment. We are educating people to employments that no longer exist. It happens here. 55% of Americans work in things that they didn't study. And in Colombia, that's 75%. So we need a debate of where is our universities going? How are they going to prepare people for jobs that don't exist yet? The economy is changing so fast that we need to change education dramatically. dramatically. Prepare people with capacities for jobs that are going to start creeping in the next 5 to 10 years. You can spend as much, you can put as many billions of pesos to today's education, and you will not solve the problem of employment. So the debate needs to be more integral in terms of education. We're doing an effort to increase education, especially for universities. But there's also a big debate that I think is very important to understand, and let me be very clear. Robledo and the left are talking about, oh my God, we're only importing food that we, Americans are exploiting Colombians because they sell us the grains that we consume. But when we try to develop areas of Colombia that could produce that same, and I'll give you an example. Cargill was supposed to produce all the corn and all the soy that Colombia imports. American imperialists only want to produce food to export. So we're in the middle also of an ideological debate that is so difficult to handle, and there's sort of a hypocrisy regarding how to produce, what to do, and how to balance those issues. And it happens in many of the issues of Colombia, but you need to focus. And reintegration and the peace process, I think, let me be very, very clear. A mess. They left a mess. Unfinanced. Lots of institutions that did the same thing, very, very uncoordinated. So what we have had to do is create one agency that will help with the whole process of reintegration and stabilization of the areas with conflict. We are going, obviously, to honor the agreements, for example, that the former government did with the coca growers. That means we need to get around $500 million a year that's not there because it wasn't financed. The PEDETs, which is the economic and social transformation of 161 or 71, I don't remember, municipalities. They're designing very, very, a 10-year program, they're designing very, very well what's going to happen with them. So in that sense, and reintegration, we understand the urgent need to pick up what's left, because part of the problem is that the former government signed the peace agreement and didn't follow through. And unfortunately, what we have seen is that many of the members of the FARC are saying, you know, our leaders left us alone. And by the leaders, I mean the heads of the FARC, etc. So we are identifying how to work with them and how to reintegrate them, but that's an urgent problem, and I think the government understands it. Unfortunately, there's a problem regarding that. The FARC did not want it to, they wanted to hold control. So they wanted to keep control of the groups they demobilized, and that was impossible. The only way to work in that is one by one. They want to go back to their families. They want to go back to, you know, their individuals. Their collective type of organization that they had while they were under arms is absolutely different. But the FARC wanted to maintain them together for political control and territorial control. And that was a mistaken policy. And it's a policy that unfortunately crashed, so we need to pick up the pieces and start one by one reintegrating them. And also those who want to keep together, for example, there's a small group in Mesetas that wants to create an environmental, not reserva, but the tourism that is ecotourism that is called turismo de guerra. So they want to show people how they live, how
conflict terrorism, conflict tourism,
and so yeah. So
what
they
a concept.
but it was really interesting. And if they were able to live out of that, well, we should support them. So the problem is that really the big issue is that they signed this accord and then they ran. That's a reality. So we're left with huge problems that we need to solve, and and that's what we're doing.
Great. I have lots of other questions, but I think it's only fair to turn to yours. Please wait for the microphone and do us the privilege of identifying yourself. First question, our friend Jose Cardenas.
Thank you, Cindy.
Is it on?
Is this on?
Yeah, I think it is.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for a very compelling perspective on the challenges that the Duque administration is facing. I remember, obviously, the many years during the Uribe administration that one of the principal goals was to reestablish government presence in these rural areas where the vacuum was filled, of course, by the criminal groups. And it seems that when the peace accord was signed with the FARC, the government was not ready to move in with government presence in many of these conflicted areas. And that, of course, has led to, again, the vacuum being filled by criminal groups. What is the Duque administration's plan for doing just that, getting back to that idea of reestablishing government presence in these zones that have been once again occupied by the criminal organization?
I think the biggest problem with the implementation of the peace process was that one, the one that they left and nobody came in. They should have been ready, and the state should have been ready to come in. And in that vacuum, obviously, illegal organizations are having their field trip. The killing of many of the social defenders has to do with that fight. Social defenders saying, no, we don't want more illegal economy. We don't want the illegal groups. And the illegal groups saying them, forget it. One of the huge problems is that one. And that's a fault of the state, too. So what we're doing is with the planning of the PEDETs, which wasn't even finished, which are the plans to bring the state to those 170 municipalities, that the whole planning of that is going to be done probably in the first trimester next year, and then we go into execution. And execution is police, military, health, education, but one of the most important things, and this is why what I spoke about palm and cacao and economic activity. Many of those, and another critical element is infrastructure, roads. If there's one thing that we need to do urgently is those roads that change economically those regions. And every ministry is working on, okay, how are you going to spend an important amount of your budget in those 171 municipalities? But it has to be well organized. It has to be well done. It needs certainly a very firm hand in terms of security, because those areas are already in dispute again. And I think the biggest element is economic conversion. When you look at those areas, you have coca. Out of those 171 municipalities, I think 180% have coca. So it's coca. Those municipalities in conflict. If you don't change the illegal economy to legal economy, you're doing nothing. So that's one of the most critical elements, and that's part of my job here, to see many of those areas and work with the Ministry of Agriculture and work with USAID and the IDB, and how are we going to get those areas in a different type of economy than they are now. That's why our policy of drug trafficking, against drug trafficking, is very integral, because we understand that if you don't do that economic side of it, whatever you do on the other side, it's not sustainable.
Right here, Hedy. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Cruz. I'm the ambassador to Aruba. Just moved to DC. We have a long lasting relationship with Colombia.
Mm.
We do send all our patients to Bogota, Cali, and Bucaramanga. Um, has been going on for, I think, more than 25 years. So you do have a great health system. We have the same problem as you have with Venezuela.
Phew.
Aruba has only 100,000, a population of 100,000, so it impacts us big.
How many do you have now?
We think around 15,000.
50% of the population. Imagine the stress.
Yeah, a problem that we have not dealt with, but we are careful with because 85% of our tourism comes from the States, is the possible outbreak of a malaria or any other disease
Measles.
that we haven't seen in years that you would think that it's eradicated. So I'm asking myself, is Colombia working with the United States on a solution if this breaks out in Colombia or one of the islands? Because then the U.S. will have a big problem.
We, as a matter of fact, my daughter is a doctor or is studying medicine. She's in 9th semester. She's almost done. And she was in a hospital, and all of a sudden she got 10 cases of measles. We didn't have measles in Colombia, and we had an epidemic, and we had to contain it. We had to, the whole protocol of containing was it's a lot of money that you need to spend. That you need to find patient zero when it comes, and so we're getting that problem already, and it just needs a very, very good follow through, and you need a health agency that, with one case, immediately starts working so it doesn't spread. That's going to happen to you, by the way. It's going to happen. It's very difficult to stop it, especially because they're coming with very bad nutrition. Most of the kids have not been vaccinated. Our health system right now is being stressed because some of them come with HIV and they need retrovirals, and we are providing it to them. As a matter of fact, the other day I was talking with Carl Meacham that represents pharma, and he said, how can we help? And I told him, we need all the medicine you guys can give us. We need to see how they can help us in terms of providing that medicine to many Venezuelans who come sick. Kids that are coming in, they immediately go to the ICU for nutrition purposes. So it's creating a huge stress. It's just going to grow, unfortunately, if we don't solve that problem at its roots. And the only way to solve it is if there's a return of real democracy to Venezuela, and that has to be our goal. And with Maduro, there's no possibility of democracy. That's the reality. And that's something that also I would like to pinpoint. The crisis in the Caribbean islands is huge, and nobody's looking at it. In Trinidad and Tobago, I think 8% of the population they already have, and they don't know how to deal with it. Yeah. And you're listening here to a case, and thank you for presenting an ambassador, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So we have a huge issue in our hands that we need to solve together.
Okay. Hattie.
Hi, my name is Hattie Babbitt, and I'm going to add another element to the list of problems facing you guys, and that is the issue of illegal mining. It touches corruption, it touches pollution, it touches the absence of the presence of the state, it touches nearly every issue you've already touched on, but is big and getting bigger, as I understand it.
Yeah.
What is the plan?
Let me start by the end of the process. One of the biggest, where is the illegal mine being sold, and where is all that illegal gold being processed in Venezuela? Venezuela has become a hub of criminal activities. That's the truth. It's harboring terrorism. Most of the ELN camps are on the other side. Most of the dissidents of the FARC had camps on the other side. Whatever you look at it, it's there. As a matter of fact, one of the biggest illegal mining operations is going on in Venezuela, with a huge gold reserve that they have in Guyana, but in Colombia, unfortunately, that's destroying the most environmentally sensible area, one of the hotspots in the world, Chocó. We need to be very, very tough. We try to get a policy of destroying the draga that they put in the middle. Our constitutional court, unfortunately, didn't allow us to do it. So sometimes we have our hands tied because of legal constrictions that you have to obey, and that hinder the possibility of being a lot more aggressive against those criminals organizations. I would say that illegal gold mining now is problematic, but a lot more damaging environmentally than coca. It's a big challenge. What new policy there is? To be very sincere, it's not on my radar. I have so many other things to deal with. To be very, very sincere, with Venezuela and with drugs and bringing investment, my plate is full. Oh yeah, no, it's dramatic. The poisoning of rivers with mercurio. Oh, it's an environmental catastrophe. One of the things that would be very great is to get the environmental community involved, saying, hey guys, hey government, help. We need that to be stopped. So there's also an activity that you guys could do, and the environmental activity could do in terms of putting pressure, generating the conditions for more aggressive policy and more aggressive action against illegal mining.
This gentleman here, wait for the microphone, please.
Ambassador, good morning. My name is Mauricio Vasquez from Aquas here in the state of Maryland. I'd like to bring two things to your attention. I'd like to hear your opinions. One has to do with yet another problem, corruption. It seems like every time there's an effort in the government to address corruption, it actually gets worse. And there was a lot done back in the previous decade, and we don't see much of what the outcome of it. The second aspect has to do with the judiciary system in Colombia, which also is, just like the taxes and everything else, is crippling the country's ability to be able to thrive on economy and everything, because not only they look at the taxes, any company will look at the taxes, but they'll look at the legal frameworks that the country has. What's your thought on those things?
I think one of the elements of corruption that is frankly critical is the judicial system. If the judicial system worked well, a lot of that corruption would be, because a lot of it's denounced, but it just dies in the court system. I think the biggest issue to fight corruption is tied to your second question, which is what are we going to do regarding the profound reform that the judicial system needs to undertake. There are discussions that are being held between the government, the courts. Unfortunately, the courts have a self-serving policy that doesn't allow real profound reform, but some things can be done and are being done. The Constitutional Court is sort of moving towards more a centrist type of policy. Which is, I think it's important, and I think it starts thinking more about the majority and those type of issues that are very critical for the development of Colombia right now. You look at projects that are critical for Colombia, and because of licensing and especially community engagement are impossible to get through, so everything's stuck. That needs to be solved. And I think one of the biggest agendas of the new Colombian government is that let's solve those barriers that are needed without eliminating the discussions and part of what was built within the Constitution of 1991, but not allowing those discussions to just stop projects, which is what's really happening. I've had 5 or 6 investors from the U.S. telling me, how do I get this done? In 3 years without having the possibility of this license, this social license being issued, because a community appears, and so that's one of the biggest issues that we have to deal with. What is the middle ground? And I think that the government right now is putting forward a new law regarding social consultation that makes it a consultation, not an approval, which is one of the biggest issues that we need to do. I have no doubt that is very important to work with the communities. That's critical, but you need to get the projects done. And right now, a lot of them are not being done because of that. And I think that's hindering growth, and it's even hindering a lot of the communities that would gain and would profit and would get more employment from projects that are being, that if they were built, they would allow them to have a better life.
Ambassador Maisto, here in the middle.
Long-
for the
Long time no see.
Wait for the microphone.
Long time no see.
Right. Ambassador John Maisto,
That's a
former
great.
former U.S. ambassador to Venezuela as well as to Nicaragua.
Venezuela and OES too.
Nicaragua and
Oh yes, and Nicaragua.
Right.
Oh God.
You've been in all the fun
Three
places.
interlinked propositions. That's right. That's
You
right.
tried.
I'm retired, but one of the things that's nice about retirement, I do some things. I'm connected to Arizona State University, and my question has to do with universities, and it's a follow-on to Jose's question. The role of universities in Colombia in the peace process. Colombia has some of the most impressive universities in the hemisphere. My question is, plans in the Duque administration to involve Colombian universities in the main issue that you just described earlier, which is filling those spaces and doing development and doing education and bringing the state to those parts of Colombia that are going to have it if you all are going to resolve the problem?
I don't know. I don't have an answer, to be very sincere. They're building the policy of how to rebuild many of those areas. Obviously, education is a critical element. But sometimes you think, to be very sincere, how do you provide the best education? Do you need to have a university, or do you need to provide the communication type of environment that allows other types of education? But that's a personal view. I don't know, but I have no doubt that the person who's developing those PEDs has education in mind. Education is a critical element in getting, especially the conversion of those zones from illegal to legal economy. It's absolutely necessary. But what exactly have they planned regarding universities? I don't have an answer. I'd rather be frank.
We have a couple of journalists in the room. I want to ask them specifically if they have
Oh,
a
God,
question
no,
that they'd
no,
have to. Sergio, I'm going to put you on the spot. Anything that you think has not been covered? Sergio Gomez from El Tiempo.
Hi. Well, I just.
Thank you for putting him on the spot for once. He always puts us on the spot.
That's right. That's
the
right. a
way
little
it's supposed to
reverse
be,
pressure.
right? I just want. I mean, one of the things that has been circling around since Trump brought it up is the idea that something different in the form of an intervention of Venezuela could be something that should be or could be on the works. What do you think about that? Is this something that has been come up in the discussions?
No, the only thing that I've heard is what President Trump said when we were in UNGA, and said, all the options are open. He said it, not me. That's all I've heard, to be very sincere. I haven't heard plans. I haven't heard discussions about it. The only element that we've had is his position. No, to be very, very sincere, well, when the State Department they finally have an assistant secretary for Western Affairs, so maybe we can start discussing with her what are their plans, what are they thinking. But as of now,
In that same in that same venue, you said that you haven't been able to see that there's a plan in the U.S. I mean, that they don't. You mean that as a criticism? Have you? I mean, what in those discussions, your feeling is that they do not know how to proceed from now, or what's the sense that you have from that discussions with the U.S. administration?
no, they obviously one of the things is that they understand how big the problem is. They are in the middle of elections, so in that sense, elections change everything in policies. So I guess they're waiting. They're looking at different options in terms of more sanctions and. But other types of discussions, no, we haven't had, and if we had, I wouldn't tell you.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Anders Beal, Latin American program.
Ambassador, you mentioned earlier that things in Venezuela can't necessarily get any worse than they are right now, and you said sanctions would be one area that countries in the region could work on, and that the U.S. could also maybe pursue further. After the midterm elections, would Colombia support kind of more drastic sanctions like oil embargo? After if it's not going to hurt the Gulf states, and is that seen as something that would actually make the situation worse in terms of migration and people fleeing the country?
I think the migration issue, it's already horrible. How can it get worse? So I think the situation in Venezuela is getting worse by the second. Every second it gets worse. The deterioration of the people that we're seeing that come through in terms of health, it's increasing. So we see it every day. It's a building that it's falling on top of you. It's not shaking. It's falling on top of you. So we have that problem day in and day out. What I think it's anything that will solve the problem, because what cannot happen is the status quo that we have now. And the status quo that we have now is, don't worry, we'll let them go. And the other countries saying, I think it will be better. So I think we need more isolation, political isolation. I think more pressure, more economic pressure, whatever pressure is needed. I think it should be on the table. And in that sense, there are some sanctions that are being discussed and are harsh, but I think if it leads to a final solution of this problem, I think it's worth looking into them, and if possible, take them.
Great. Alfondo.
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm with Caracol from Colombia. Ambassador, I have a question regarding in past days, the ex-minister Andres Felipe Arias made some comments about it being insisting on the stance that it's a political persecution against him, and that's why he's in Florida at this time. I wanted to know if you have had any dealings with, DOJ, the courts, or anything regarding his case, and what your take is on it.
No comment. Next question.
Yeah. Bye. There you go. That was quick. Sure, Sergio.
You want another no comment?
No, I'm going to add an easy one. You just mentioned 10th of January 2019 as an interesting date. That's the date where Maduro will start his new 6-year period. Is there any reason why you mentioned that something might go on?
No, because the opposition have said that this is a breaking point in terms of legitimacy. Because many countries don't believe that the elections that lead to that period that were legitimate, so he would be an illegitimate leader. Not that he is legitimate now, but it's the opposition who have said, look, By that time, he needs to be an absolutely legitimate, have an absolute legitimacy regarding being president of Venezuela. That opens the scopes of actions, I think, but that's what the opposition have said, that they think that if by that time most of the countries don't recognize Venezuela, that would be a step ahead. The new Venezuelan government, that would be a step ahead. That's what they have been saying. That's how they look at this importance. Sorry, Laura.
Okay. President Trump is scheduled to visit Colombia as well as Argentina in the context of the G20. What are your expectations for that visit? What are your concerns about that visit?
No concerns, none. Expectations that we can build a long-term strong alliance to further it, to have some more commitment regarding, probably to have some commitment regarding this coca and this economic trade that can help us fill the vacuum in those areas regarding coca, and a very frank discussion regarding Venezuela. I think those are the main issues, and I would say that it will be very much centered around them.
Did you? Sure, second round. We'll come back to Jose Cardenas.
Thank you for the second opportunity. I wanted to pick up on the issue of Venezuela. I mean, one thing you can't criticize the Trump administration about is being lackadaisical about the implementation of sanctions on Venezuela. Unfortunately, however, it's been out there alone. We have seen Panama. Obviously, Colombia has some individual sanctions. But now that these countries, the frontline states, let's call them, like Colombia, like Brazil, that are feeling the impact.
Argentina and Chile.
Now that it is impacting them directly, what needs to change, it seems to me, is more governments in the region doing the same thing, diplomatically and economically, isolating the Maduro regime.
You're right. I think the Trump administration was alone, and they said it very, very clearly when we got, at the 7th of August, when we said, okay, we're ready to work with you very clearly regarding Venezuela, and he said, finally, they were alone. I think that has changed. In the last year, it has dramatically changed. And with that consensus, I think a multilateral action is possible. For the first time, you can see something that has this multilateral umbrella of work and of, so what we need is to see what type of multilateral actions we can take. I think the U.S. could take the lead in that. The opposition could take a lead in that also. And I think it's, at least the political conditions are there to move one step ahead in terms of, or one step forward in terms of putting more pressure to Venezuela and being closer to a solution. To be very sincere, this consensus, I haven't seen it in Latin America in many, many, many years. For the first time, you're hearing it all over. So you have multilateral cover to wherever decisions that are being taken or should be taken, and I think that's important. That makes the decision-making a little bit easier.
Let me push you on that. There are about to be major changes in the governments of Mexico and Brazil. All indications are that they will not join this consensus about pressuring Maduro very, very harshly. And there are also indications that in Brazil, they could close the border and make migration much more difficult. Do you see the elections in the two largest economies of the region as affecting the multilateral consensus that you've just referred to?
We lose one, we win one.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. right.
No, I'm being very pragmatic. It's obvious that Venezuela, it's obvious that the foreign policy, and he has said it very, very clearly. López Obrador is more of the old guard type of traditional Mexican foreign policy. Um, and Bolsonaro is, to a certain extent, also more traditional in terms of Brazil having a great influence in the area. But an influence in which obviously Venezuela is seeing as a rogue state, which it is. The issue is that in Latin America has never had that. Latin America has not had a nation that has become the hub of criminal activities like we have. So that changes the discussion around Venezuela. Venezuela is a country that harbors all type of illegal groups. Venezuela is a hub for drug trafficking. Venezuela is a hub for weapons dealings and things like that. Venezuela has become a hub for gold, illegal gold, distribution and processing. Yeah, so it's it changes how you discuss about a country when it's such a hub for criminal activity.
Sure.
Steve Landy. I apologize for a few minutes late, but it was a NAFTA event. You have to keep them up in the air, and I hope this doesn't repeat something that you already have discussed. But the record, your record, and the record of the new administration in Colombia in dealing with longstanding trade irritants with the U.S. and bringing them under control is quite amazing. And given the signals that are coming out of the administration yourself is really worthy of note. One of the most exciting initiatives that are going on in the trade field is the Pacific Alliance, where 4 countries, independent of the big countries, are working together. Have you given any thought yet as to how one can build a longer-term relationship between the Trump administration and the forward-looking attitude towards private investment, trade, et cetera, of Colombia, perhaps alone, perhaps with the Pacific Alliance? Thank you.
We certainly hope that with the Trump administration, this commercial relationship can grow in both ways. He certainly doesn't like trade imbalances. Fortunately for our economic relation, we are almost 1 year the U.S. is ahead, another year Colombia is ahead. So there's no significance. Therefore, we're not in that type of radar, which I think is a good thing. The radar of NAFTA or of huge trade imbalances, I think that's a positive thing. And what we need to do is work many of the areas that we haven't worked in the free trade agreement of bringing companies to use Colombia as a transformation economy of goods for the U.S. And we're working on bringing companies that can do that in Colombia, especially in the free trade zones, and so we're working very strategically to find where do we go and how do we go, and we are adapting our institutions to make them more stable and better conditions for private investment. One, I think one of the great things from the Santos administration is the Pacific Alliance. That's a very, very, very important institution. I don't know how the AMLO government will look at it, because we don't know what his view of trade, generally you look at Chile, Peru, and Colombia, and we are very much free trade. We have a consensus. Mexico before López Obrador was with that view. We don't know if that view is going to change dramatically, and that would hurt the Alliance of the Pacific. So we're going to have to wait until we know a little bit more of how his posture is going to be regarding the Pacific Alliance, to see where that's going. I don't know if with the NAFTA change, they will look with better eyes at the Pacific Alliance, maybe. I think that alliance, which has moved slowly but surely, is a huge and creates huge possibilities for those 4 countries. And President Duque's international strategy and economic strategy obviously has the Pacific Alliance at the center of it.
In the back.
Thank you, Ambassador Santos. Sara Perea, Segrist. At some point in your chat, you had talked about the current state of the reintegration process of the guerrilla with the FARC agreements. And one of the campaign promises of President Duque was to renegotiate some points in those agreements. What is the current strategy of the administration in developing consensus and support internationally to give enough resources for the renegotiation of the agreements and the actual implementation?
Okay, those are 2 different things. The implementation of the things that have been agreed to, we're doing our job. We're reorienting it and making it more efficient. Obviously, a lot of the economic promises are unfulfillable because there's not the money. Really, it was just so crazy, the amount of money, but many of the reintegration, rehabilitation of area, things like that are going to get done. In terms of the changes, it's 3 changes, basic changes. 1, to eliminate from the Constitution, which is amazing, the constitutional provision that through the accord was reached, that drug trafficking is a political crime. That's I guess the international community would have no problem with that. The second one is that whomever commits a crime, because that wasn't clear, and look at the mess that we are now. Whomever commits a crime after the agreement was signed cannot go back on its benefits and leave it crystal clear. And the third one is those who lied in the process, those who didn't give the weapons away, those who eliminate that gray area in which you could move in and out, which was left in the accord. So you lie, you don't give, you don't abide by any of the elements of the agreement, and you're out of it. Those are the 3 changes that we're going to do. It's a provision that's already in the discussion in Congress. And another one. If any of the leaders are by the HEP condemned to, even though they have, and that's another discussion, are condemned on war crimes or those types of really horrible crimes, crimes against humanity, they cannot be in Congress. Those are the main provisions that we want to change, and I don't think the international community would be too worried about that either. They'll still have their space, but somebody else needs to fill it up. And I think that affects a lot of the leaders of the FARC, because the systematicity of many of the crimes just shows, if the HEP does its job, it'll show, it'll get to that same conclusion.
I have one last question,
Sure.
unless there's another from the floor. Ambassador Maisto, and then I'll go, and then we'll
Sure.
give you your final word. Sure. Here, the mic. There you go.
Thank you for the opportunity. A quick question. Are you satisfied, is the Duque government satisfied with the level of economic assistance that the Trump administration is providing or is projecting to provide? Are you looking to reconstitute it in such way, in one way or another? What is the latest thinking about economic development activity and funding from the United States?
We would certainly like more. That's easy to answer. But we understand the political realities. We're fortunate, and I think in Congress, Congress has been great to Colombia, and they have supplied the support so that a lot of the funds weren't taken away, and I think that's important. But we're hearing, good intentions, and the discourse from the Trump administration is we're really fine, and what we want to discuss with them is how do we do a long-term plan in terms of bringing stability to the region and what role we can play. And I think that's going to be the big game in the next couple of years, because I think because the Central American, the Northern Triangle, and probably most of Central America is going to need assistance in the long term. I think Ecuador, Peru, I think there are some problems that need some countries that are going to need help, and we can help provide it with the U.S. So we're looking in a long-term plan to do that, to build capabilities around the continent.
And final question that I'll ask. How, if at all, do you think that U.S. Colombia relations would change in the event that, as of November, the House of Representatives goes from Republican to Democratic control? Do you anticipate any change in the way you do your work or the issues that you emphasize?
No. Colombia has been a bipartisan policy always. In the 2 weeks and a little bit more that I've been here, I've visited with Dianne Feinstein, I've visited with Gregory Meeks, I've visited with Blunt, I've visited with McGovern. We have to maintain Colombia as a bipartisan issue. That was part of the success that Colombia had. Look, you were Obama, Clinton, Bush, and Trump. Pastrana, Uribe, Santos, Duque. Not many policies are sustained through so many political changes in countries, and the success is that we haven't focused on that we have had a long-term vision with political support from both parties, and we have to keep that.
That's a great note on which to conclude. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to everybody who came this morning. This event has been webcast. A video will be on our website within a day, hopefully later this afternoon, but within a day. So please join me in thanking Ambassador Santos and wishing him a successful time in Washington.